Greetings! In this video I'm going to be painting a Terminator of the Tigers Argent Chapter. This chapter was requested by a viewer, who said this chapter might be a bit too similar to the Silver Skulls chapter that I painted a while back. I decided to try something different for this one, but before we get to that, I of course have to mention that the chapter Armour here has been 3D printed, and that I've primed the model black through my airbrush. The Tigers Argent use a mostly silver scheme, with black accents. I'm going to be trying AK Interactive's Super Chrome paint for most of this model. Whilst this paint can be brush applied, and I'll be doing just that for this video, it would go on a lot better through an airbrush. It also takes a little time to dry. It can be touch dry, but there'll be marks on the surface if it's not fully cured, before you apply a second coat or if you touch it. Besides painting the armour, the armorial itself received the Super Chrome paint, as did the little winged skull on the Stormbolter. After leaving the chrome to cure for a while, I switched over to regular acrylic paints to do the rest of the model, starting with Abaddon black to clean up the pauldrons and the weapon casing. I focused on applying base coats for the time being, as covering such a glossy paint can be a bit difficult. Zandri dust was used for the parchment of the purity seal on the leg here, followed by Screamer pink as a base coat for the wax. Mechanicus standard grey was then used to base coat the Crux Terminatus on his pauldron and the little one on his knee. I found this art on the fandom wiki. I don't know where it's from exactly or how real it is, but I like the stripe on the helmet. It made me want to try something similar to break up the chrome. I made the stripe with Bestigor flesh, applying it in a few thinned coats where I thought it'd look nice. Next, wanting to break up the silver, I used some Iron Warriors and painted in the details that would normally be silver on normal Terminator models. Things like the cables, the exhausts, and the weapon chassis, for example. Next I moved on to Retributor armour, just for the exposed cartridges in the Stormbolter magazine windows. Runefang steel was next, highlighting the previously applied Iron Warriors bits. Sticking with the theme of highlighting bits for now, I switched to Thunderhawk blue and highlighted the black armour bits, and applied a few rough scratches. This guy's not going to be too battle damaged, so I left the weathering with just these few scratches. Having highlighted the Stormbolter, I noticed I missed the rivets on there, so I briefly switched back to Runefang steel for those, before switching to Dawnstone and applying the first layering pass on the Cruxes. This was applied over the raised surfaces, leaving the Mechanicus standard grey in the deeper parts. Administratum grey was used to finish the Cruxes, dotting and scratching the paint where I thought it needed some emphasis on the details. Noticing the stripe on the helmet felt a bit flat, I switched to Ungor flesh and did a simple edge highlight. Moving back to the base coating briefly, I used Mephiston red to base coat the lenses. I applied this paint to the eyes and to the little targeter lenses off the side of the torso. Now back to highlights, with the Ushabti bone on the parchment, specifically on the raised bits and along the edges. Pink horror was used around the edge of the wax, and on the sculpted skull to help that stand out too. Now back to the lenses for a few colours. Evil Sunz Scarlet was applied in about 3/4 of the lens area, then followed by roughly 1/3 of the area with Wild Rider red. Lugganath orange finished the lenses, doing a small dot on the top right of each targeter, and a little dot towards the nose for each of the eye lenses. With those done, I went back to Abaddon black and painted in some little scribbles for the purity seal text. Now to ruin that chrome effect with an enamel wash. I used my typically used Sepia Paneliner for this, and applied it fairly heavily all over the model. This immediately toned down the reflectivity quite a bit. I focused the application around details like the chest and the thighs, basically anywhere where there's actual detail for the enamel to flow into. The rest of the smooth panels received a once-over, whilst watching out for any unwanted pooling. I brought out a cotton tip and tried to buff up some of the surfaces, but it didn't seem to bring much shine back, it merely just reduced the colour of the enamel. After I was happy enough with the enamel, I applied my usual basing method, painted the base rim, and then sealed everything in with an ultramatte varnish. And here we have it! A Terminator from the Tigers Argent Chapter. This paint job was super experimental, and whilst the end result looks pretty cool in my opinion, it most certainly isn't as shiny as I was hoping it would be. There are of course numerous reasons for this, first of which was the brush application. I needed to do multiple passes with the brush, and required me to put it on thicker than I'd like, otherwise the chrome seemed to separate and show brush strokes. This meant that I couldn't get a completely chrome finish, as the paint was going on so thick that the details would start to get obscured. Now there is a thinner for this super chrome paint, but I didn't get any. So if you were going to try this with a brush, I might recommend you try that. The second reason that I think the chrome was less chromy is the enamel effect. The enamel effects are normally fairly transparent, but it seems that even the transparent bits of the enamel leave a matting agent over the surface. This can be useful for other paint jobs, but I probably should have tried an enamel effect that has a glossy finish instead for this one. And the third reason, the varnish that I used at the end. I knew that the ultramatte varnish would tone down the effect further, but I honestly wanted to see how much it would. I'm surprised about how much shine did actually survive the ultramatte varnish, so that's a good thing I guess, but ultimately if you wanted to preserve more shine, I'd recommend using a satin varnish or maybe try some airbrush thinner by itself. I do think it's necessary to do some kind of clear coat over the enamel, as it can rub off even weeks after if your fingers are even just a little bit oily. But anyway, chrome experimentation aside, I am really happy with the result of this model. The silver, despite the weird experimental route that I took, ended up looking fairly similar to the references, so I call this a win. The stripe on the helmet definitely helped too. I didn't see any Codex compliant markings for this chapter, so I figured I'd go with a stripe from the Dreadnought reference, instead of a Codex approved white helmet. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of the final result, or if you've used the AK Super Chrome before, and let me know how that went. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this one, and that you stick around for the next one.